Welcome to the RebelRebel Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Dargie. The RebelRebel Podcast is a show that celebrates creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. It's a love letter to those people who think audaciously and act courageously in the pursuit of making the world a better and more interesting place. Thank you to Make More Creative for producing the show and helping us reach people in 65 different countries. 65 and growing. That's incredible. If you're a creative rebel with a story to tell, or you know one, head on over to the RebelRebelPodcast.com and fill out the guest request form. We'd love to hear from you, first of all. And second of all, who knows, you might be the next guest on our show. And while you're thinking about all that stuff, why don't you like, share, subscribe, wherever you do that stuff and wherever you're seeing this or hearing this. Every time you interact with the show, it helps us more than you know. So if you could just do that little thing, we sure would appreciate it. And you know, if you feel so inclined, head on over to our store. We got some cool merch. There's some great shirts. There's even a coffee mug to help you wake up in the morning, which is kind of fun. Well, the coffee mug won't help you wake up, but what you put in it will. Or if you'd like to become a sponsor, just send us a note to studio@therebelrebelpodcast.com. Today on the show, I've got Mike Brevik from CyberDogz Marketing. And there's so much good stuff in this episode. It's like the 80-20 rule, and the 20% is going to surprise you. It's clickbait, I know, but the 20% is going to blow your mind. And man, we talked everything from comic books to creative to West Coast style to running a marketing company in the Midwest with a West Coast vibe. And man, I can't say enough great things about Mike and his company and his worldview. You're going to learn some shit in this one, and it's going to leave a mark. Welcome to the RebelRebel Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Dargie, and across the planet, all the way across the planet, at least twice, we've got Mike Brevik. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm so good, thank you. We're just before we hit record here, we were talking about our plight in the tundra and the amount of snow that we have. So I'm up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and you are just down south of me.
Correct. I am about 25 miles from Fargo, North Dakota on the Minnesota side. So
yeah. All right. So southeast of southeast. So you're like right smack dab in the prairies, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we're, I guess we would be on the west side of the state, but right over the border of North Dakota. And we're probably, I don't know, 20 miles or so from like big lake country, wooded areas, stuff like that.
Nice.
So it's your quintessential Minnesota environment.
Oh, that's so great. Okay,
yeah.
Awesome. So it definitely not prairie. Clearly I don't know geography, which is why I do this.
Yeah, we're not far because North Dakota is pretty flat, and I mean we're right there. So
that's cool. So your company is called CyberDogz Marketing.
Correct.
And it is kick-ass, I have to say. Like I've looked into all of your stuff. I'm going to put everything in the show notes. And you have like, I don't want to get in the way of the story. So what I'd like you to do, Mike, is just if you could just tell our listeners a little bit about what you're doing, what CyberDogz Marketing does, and then we can get into some of the really cool shit that you've been up to.
Yeah. So I'm Mike Brevik. I'm the founder and owner, but I call myself the chief marketing officer for CyberDogz. And we're an agency, but we're really steeped on the creative space, the branding side of things. We lead with those kind of two things, and then we kind of backfill and supplement with all the other necessary aspects of marketing, from web development to social media, graphic design, those kinds of things. Right on. But we really kind of pride ourselves on calibrating the brand from the onset of the relationship with the clients, and we kind of start that process from there.
Awesome. And what does that mean for those not in the know to calibrate a brand? Like,
well, we get clients that come to us with a blank slate that say, hey, I'm starting a business, or, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and I don't have an identity for my company or a logo or a brand to go with it. So we have those kinds of engagements as well. But then we also have people that kind of, they kind of come to us after the first 5-10 years of their business, and they're like, hey, I just don't feel like I love my brand. The reason why I picked it in the first place was because my sister-in-law drew it on a napkin, or like they were so in such a hurry to get their business rolling, they just settled on it. They settled on a name. They settled on a logo.
Interesting.
And now that they're 5-10 years into it, they just they're recognizing the fact that they don't love it.
Yeah.
So then what I do is kind of work with them on figuring out, like, let's rewind the clock 5-10 years and figure out why you started this in the first place. And let's start to extract those feelings and those reasons why it is what it is and try to align those two things. So like, I don't want to blow up your business, but I want to catch the brand up to where it should be with where you're at. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's a delicate balance because, people, it's working. If it's working, but it might not be working as well as it could. And I do love this concept of people just falling out of love with their brand and needing to rekindle that relationship.
Yeah. And it's funny because you get people all the time that, they'll make compliments or things about like our swag. Like, I love your swag. I love X, Y, and Z, but I don't do that for my own brand because my logo sucks. Or I don't do that for my own brand because I don't like X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And it's like, see, we should fix that, because if you don't love your brand, if you're not attracted to your own brand, then why would anybody else be?
Oh, that's lovely. You got to love yourself, man.
Yep. So we help them try to find that and try to develop something that they can be proud of. And it's cool when they, when they get excited about it or they feel pride in wearing their own brand.
Yeah.
I just think it assists them in the sales process. I think it gives them a little more swagger than they had before, and it gives them a little bit of confidence behind their own company. So
that is so cool. So let me do a little bit of time traveling because it's, in the spirit of Michael J. Fox and Back to the Future. Let's go back in time, rewind the clock to Mike Brevik as a young, impressionable lad who maybe one day wanted to be an astronaut and decided to become a creative instead. How did that happen?
I was always, small town in Minnesota, I was always a sports kid, and, we did all the small town things, rode the bikes and stayed out till dark and did all those kinds of things. But I was always in the arts too. So I was always drawing, painting, kind of chasing that. And originally I wanted to be a cartoonist and an illustrator. And, first of all, wanted to work for Disney, or if I couldn't do that, maybe some kind of a comic book artist or something like that. And I was just always kind of in tune to that artistic side of things. And I'm not like a card carrying OCD, but I'm also I'm very attention to detail. So like even growing up as a kid, I can remember like breaking down logos in my mind or sketching or doodling logos in my notebook and, following the Nike brand. And I probably had just kind of a geek sensation with branding and logos and kind of that creative process before I even really knew what it was. And when I, got through high school and went to college and started to kind of find my way as to where I want to be in my career, it just kind of morphed together at that point. Like even in college, I thought I wanted to be an illustrator and a cartoonist right out of school, and I got a job at a small ad agency and started kind of doing custom illustrations and different things. And even though I still enjoy that kind of work, I kind of knew that it wasn't necessarily the itch that I wanted to scratch. So I kind of right turned a little bit and kind of went more towards graphic design, which evolved to web design, and then it just kind of evolved from there.
Wow, that's wild. What okay, so definitely I was wrong about the astronaut.
Yeah. No, most kids either want to be a pro athlete or famous or something, and I probably wasn't that much different, but the one common denominator was always art for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is it that was, you grew up in middle America, neither coast, and neither, I don't want to say neither here nor there, but you're sort of in the middle of stuff. But you have you have a big reach. Like, you expand beyond your borders quite regularly. And I'd like to know a little bit more about that, because that's huge. It's uncommon.
Yeah. So I kind of consider us a West Coast agency in the Midwest, because I think our talents we mimic that West Coast vibe, and we follow a lot of brands and agencies out there that just do like amazing logo and concept art and illustration stuff. So we've always kind of used that as inspiration. But when I started CyberDogz, that was one of the things that I felt limited by, is being in the Midwest. I just felt limited in the fact that if I only play in my own backyard, I'm only going to be as good as the guys around me, and I'm not going to be able to stretch beyond that. So I made it a focus, and it was kind of a strategic slow and grow model, but I made it a focus to just, for every local client I was going to chase, or for every local opportunity that I was going to have, I was going to try to find something elsewhere, whether it was south, north, east, where I just wanted to get out of the area so that I could consider not only myself as a national agency, but to try to stretch the kind of the boundaries of creativity as to where we were going with some of this. And what was interesting about it is, as much as I was doing that to fill my own cup, I also found opportunity in that, because when you go southeast, wherever west, they find it fascinating. Like, where are you at? Like, what are you doing? And there was kind of this novelty that went with it as to why this agency, or why this creative from Minnesota was trying to solicit work, East Coast, West Coast. So
yeah, isn't that wild? Because I mean, I think about it while you're talking. I'm just like, why wouldn't you just move to where you wanted to be? And let me pose that question. Why didn't you just move? Why didn't you go to the bigger centers?
Yeah, because I love small town Minnesota. I love, in my previous life in the corporate world, I got to travel enough, and I got to see enough of the U.S. and certain parts of the world that it's not that I don't like other places, but it made me appreciate my small town roots. And I like to walk in the woods and deer hunt and ice fish, and I like to do all those different things that are very local to where I live. But I didn't want that to be a limiting factor in how I kind of created a vision for CyberDogz.
Wow.
And if I did that, if I just adopted my surroundings professionally, I felt like that's not the vision for what I want CyberDogz to be. I want CyberDogz to be much bigger than that. So I got to think bigger. I got to take chances. I got to just stretch my own comfort to get out there and try new things and see what kind of connections I can make.
Amazing. We have this a saying around here, which is think audaciously and act courageously.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of fits right down the fairway, what you're doing. That is so cool. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure about the timeline for this, but you did you brokered a deal about a motorcycle, and Milwaukee Tools was involved. Who else?
Janus Motorcycles.
Janus Motorcycles. Was it? Yeah, just Janus Motorcycle and Old Milwaukee and CyberDogz. How did that come to be?
So it was actually like, I'll give you the context of that specific story, but it was actually something I'd done numerous times before, in the fact that I'm kind of a brand geek and I follow certain brands, and I'm just kind of a voyeur in a way, where I sit in the bushes and I watch these brands develop, and I just, it's interesting to me to watch these companies develop and to build their own relationships and connections. And I mean, I've been doing that. I've been watching like Lincoln Design, for example. They're one of the brands I follow a lot. I love their stuff, but I've been watching them for years and just enjoying the evolution of how far they've come. Wow. And kind of dropping back into the motorcycle story, I started following Janus Motorcycles 2-3 years ago, and I just thought it was cool. I'm like, man, these guys are just doing these retro bikes, and I didn't know how big, how small. I really didn't know anything about them, other than I was just kind of geeking out on their brand and their journey. Yeah. And I have a relationship with Milwaukee Tool, and help them out from time to time, and I've done certain things with them throughout my career. And I was just in a discussion with the guy I know from Milwaukee, and he said, hey, if you got any ideas sometime, just throw them at me and we'll see what sticks. And I said, well, actually, I said, I've been following this company, and here's who they are, here's what it is. And I started telling him all about Janus, and what prompted it was the local Milwaukee rep here sponsors a guy who does what's called the Cannonball Run, if you know what that is.
Sure do.
So this guy does the Cannonball Run on like a 1912, I'm probably wrong on that year, but a very early vintage Harley. And we were talking about the Cannonball Run and how this guy did all this stuff, whatever, which kind of got me thinking about the Janus thing. So I shared my Janus story with him, and I'm like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we did a kind of a co-branded collab kind of a thing, and just threw the idea out there. And he's like, well, make it happen. And I'm like, huh, really? He's like, yeah, go ahead and do that. And I'm like, okay. So the next day I called up Janus Motorcycles and I said, hey, this is going to take a little bit of explanation, but my name is Mike Brevik. I'm from CyberDogz, and I have a connection at Milwaukee. And I tried to explain it to this gal over the phone, and I could just tell it was like, and you want to do what? And who are you?
And why?
And I'm like, I said, I can put this in an email for you. I said, I assure you it's not a prank. I said, but we have a concept, we have an idea. And if you guys are game to at least have one more conversation about it, I think we can make something happen here. Crazy. And she's like, let me have somebody call you back. And I got off the phone and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that really went the way I thought it would. And a little while later, I got a call from their general manager, and he's like, start over, tell me the story. Yeah. And I just kind of re-explained the story and really stressed the fact that what we want to do is a co-branded, something unique, something that would create impact, something that would create purpose, something like, yes, it's a motorcycle and it's tools and it's that, but we really just wanted to create something that kind of created a ripple effect of collaboration. And that's what we went at them with in that second iteration. We ended up setting up a meeting between myself, Milwaukee, and Janus to kind of at least legitimize, like, we're really doing this. We really want to do this. Yeah. And the meeting went really well. Everybody loved it. And at that point, me and my connection from Milwaukee, we took a road trip down to Goshen, Indiana to meet with Janus and get a tour of their facility, learn more about kind of what they do. And what was super cool about it is all the things that Milwaukee does as a brand. Like, yes, they're kind of a beast in the tool world, sure, but they're very steeped in the engineering and the research and kind of being thought leaders in technology. Like, they're very innovative. So I didn't know this at the time, but then actually going to Janus and seeing how innovative they are and how creative they are, and how most of, like, 90+% of these bikes are built right there in Goshen, Indiana. They're bending their own tubes and pipes and welding it together, and it's essentially made in the USA kind of vibe. Yeah. It just really, the alignment was just beautiful. And we spent a couple days down there, not only kind of the first date for all these brands to kind of get together, but also for us to kind of work the kinks out and fill in the gaps as to whether or not this would be an excellent collaboration. And by the time we got in the truck to leave, I mean, it was kind of all hands in and one big kind of cheer fest. We were all going to do it. And it was just super cool. And what was neat about it is I was kind of the tick on the back of this whole thing, because I'm not Milwaukee or Janus. And I just had the vision and kind of the ability to broker the deal and kind of paint the vision for them. Yeah. So at that point on, we went forward with building 2 different bikes, and I got the 3-legged stool kind of concept, but I got to take at least part of that responsibility in helping design the bikes, helping design kind of the social media campaigns, and helping to kind of just see it through, kind of see this idea through to the end. And pound for pound, CyberDogz didn't benefit. They're not necessarily a client. We didn't necessarily benefit it, from it the way that maybe we could have, but it was just something fun that filled our cups and kind of energized that creative part of the team to just do something bigger and something kind of not for ourselves, if that makes sense.
Totally. I love this idea that somebody came to you, one of your connections said, hey, if you have a thing, tell me about the thing. And then you're just like, oh, well, I have a thing. So this, I think, is just the genesis, the most beautiful part about creatives, when you can take 2 very dissimilar things, put them together into some magical moment, and that you had the audacity just to go ahead and do that. I love that. That's fantastic.
Well, and I took it as a challenge. Like when he's like, yeah, make it happen. I'm like, okay, well, I guess, now I got to do it. Like,
yeah,
because otherwise it was just hot air. So like,
yeah,
I made it my mission the next day to like, I'm going to sell this thing. I'm going to do this.
I was going to say, like, is this something you'd ever done before? Like a collab across, the United States from different states with hardware and, like that sounds like maybe it's something you do all the time.
Actually I had done it in my previous life in corporate, but it was different because I carried the weight of the company I was working for. So there was some influence there.
Yeah.
Me doing it as Mike Brevik from Minnesota, nobody knows, nobody cares. It was different because I had to sell it a little harder and I had to be a little bit more confident in the vision of what I was doing. To your question, I think the one time that stands out, and I'll make this quick. I try to do an initiative like this every year. Like I try to come up with an idea that makes no sense, and we just
swing big.
Yep, we try to do one kind of stupid project per year. Let's just do something cool once a year that doesn't fit in the model or doesn't fit in the plan, because let's just do it because we want to. And the first time we did that as CyberDogz, I don't know if you know who Dan Jurgens is, but he is the comic creator and illustrator behind a lot of different DC characters, but he also wrote and illustrated The Death of Superman, which was like a huge thing in like the 90s.
Yeah.
Dan Jurgens is from Minnesota, and I knew that. And I was having one of those entrepreneur days. This is years ago in the early CyberDogz days, but I was having a entrepreneur day where I'm like, what am I doing? This is like, should I just go back to work somewhere? Like, it was kind of one of those days.
Yeah.
And whenever I have those kinds of days, I try to just like, what can I do for somebody else that at least makes me feel better about what I'm doing? And then
nice.
Get a nice reset, and I can hit her fresh tomorrow. So I was kind of looking up Dan Jurgens, like, I wonder what he's doing now, kind of a thing. And I ended up finding his website online, and no offense, Dan, if you're listening to this, but it was bad. I was like, man, Dan needs some marketing help. So on a whim,
crazy,
I found where I could contact Dan Jurgens, and Dan Jurgens is still a DC comic book artist and a pretty prominent name in the comic book industry. But I had found where I could contact Dan. I sent him an email and I just said, hey Dan, this is going to make no sense, but my name is Mike Brevik. I'm a huge fan. I'd like to build you a website for free, and I hope you take me up on it. I just want to help you out. And it was crickets. I didn't hear anything for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I got an email back from Dan Jurgens that said, hey, I don't know why you would want to do this kind of a thing, but I'm interested. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And that was like, it was like, I don't know, like getting an email from Bruce Springsteen or something. I was like, oh my God. Like he actually responded to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple conversations later, we just ended up building a website for Dan Jurgens, which kind of slipped us into the comic book industry.
Wow.
And we just did it as a kind of a good faith kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And again, it completely it put enough gas in our tanks to keep going. That was the whole point.
Isn't that wild? So, and what was sort of the outcome of that giving? How did that sort of, was it just putting gas back in your tank, or was there ancillary benefits later on that happened? Did you do other projects in the comic book world that, how'd that ecosystem conspire?
I think we, to some degree, we got to ride the wave of credibility from having done a project for Dan Jurgens.
Yeah.
And that was, in my opinion, that was kind of the byproduct of it. But the initial payoff was just the cool factor of we got to do this for Dan Jurgens.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of like, if I got to blow snow at Bruce Springsteen's house, that would be enough for me.
Yeah, I get it.
Then all of a sudden he invites me in, takes me on tour, gives me a guitar. I don't know if that would ever happen, but it's just kind of like, let's just start there.
Yeah.
And let's just do something that makes us feel good. And if that's all that we get out of it, that's still pretty good.
That's an incredible point of view. And I wish that more people did that sometimes you just have to do the things that make you feel good with no agenda.
Yeah. Well, we kind of have an 80-20 rule that we operate by. And the 80% of the time we have to make smart decisions and business decisions, and we have to make sure that our pricing is like, let's do all the smart business stuff.
Yeah.
But then 20% of the time, let's just do cool stuff. Let's do stuff that's fun. Let's take chances. And if we lose on a couple of those opportunities, so what?
Yeah.
But we're going to keep doing cool stuff and fun stuff, because it does create a byproduct of opportunity. I think it puts us in some interesting conversations. It puts us in some interesting opportunities to kind of tell those stories.
Totally.
But at the end of the day, for us, it's just, just filling that cup. Wouldn't that be cool? And then we just run down that road,
I think I found the title for the episode is Wouldn't It Be Cool?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool? So think about things that would be cool. What happens next for you? So, what's your next big weird project, or what's your next big favorite project? Where do you see CyberDogz going?
Unofficially, we are continuing to spread out, and I don't know why I can't give you a real businessy answer.
Yeah.
I just want to go more West Coast. I like the vibe. I like the companies, the people, I like the design style. Mm-hmm. So over the last, call it 12 to 18 months, that we've been building up the team and continuing to kind of grow from a structure standpoint.
Yeah.
But what we've been doing with that is to kind of continue to kind of push boundaries and go outside of our area even further than we have before, and more often than we have before. So our current kind of initiative that we're working on now is we're doing a lot of work with the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity. So if you know who Chuck Jones is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Chuck Jones is the creator of Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner and
his
Looney
rules.
Tunes. Yeah, like he's an icon essentially in the animation world.
Yeah.
And we've started doing a lot of work for the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity, providing a lot of kind of donated work there, creating assets for them. We were able to go out there and support them at Comic-Con San Diego this last year. And we're currently, like, this is, I don't even know if I should say this, but we're currently working out a possible bike collab between Chuck Jones and Janus Motorcycles.
Is it going to have like Acme on the side of it?
We don't know yet. Like, I probably shouldn't even have shared that, but we don't know yet.
Yeah.
But stuff
we'll
like
keep
that,
it on the down low.
Keep that on the DL. But we are kind of throwing ideas out there like that to
Love
try
it.
to just do more cool stuff. And to be honest, it's stuff that fills our cup. It's fun.
Yeah, no shit. So, Janice, if you're listening to this, which I know you will be, I'll put in my order for my Acme Janus motorcycle as soon as it's ready. You just let me know.
Yeah.
I'm all about it.
The cool thing is we're wanting to do it in a way that creates a donation cycle or some kind of a donation opportunity for the center, which does a lot of good things in the community.
Yeah.
So if it all works out, not only will we end up with a really, really cool project and a cool story, but we're going to end up with something that then puts dollars and efforts and impact back into the community, which is cool.
Yeah, I love that so much. Mike, you're like, the trajectory is just so great. I do a lot of talks, and one of the things that I mention about entrepreneurs, and sometimes you walk out off the ledge like Wile E. Coyote, not realizing that there's nothing below you. And then you have that moment, you have that Chuck Jones moment where you look down and you pull out your sign.
Yeah.
And away you go. It's so neat that you're tied into that whole culture and cycle, and what an impact that person has made in the world. And that's really cool that you're doing that.
Yeah. And I really appreciate and enjoy the abstract nature of it. Like how we can go from Milwaukee Tool to Janus Motorcycle back over to Chuck Joe. Like, I like the fact that we're going from one end of the spectrum to the other, and the fact that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because when I do talk to like entrepreneurs and even like business coaches that I've worked with, they all want it to make sense. They all try to guide me back towards the logical. And I'm like, yeah, but everybody sees that coming. Like, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, we need to go left when we're supposed to go right, and zig when we zag. And like, we need to attack it differently. Otherwise, your white noise.
Yeah. You're just the buzz in the background.
Yeah.
That is inspiring as anything I've ever heard on this show, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, but it's true. Cause I really feel like there's people doing that out there, but they're quiet about it. And for us, it's like the model. It's like, that's our recipe. Like,
yeah. Well, I'm inspired. I might borrow some of that recipe. I hope other people do too. I think that's such a neat thing to do. So Mike's out in the woods doing what Mike does. Okay. So imagine Mike sitting there maybe you're out hunting deer. Maybe you're just out for a nice walk. Doesn't matter. But you're thinking to yourself, man, I really wish that people knew blank. What is it that's top of mind for you regularly where you're just like, if I could share this just with the world, what would that be? I just heard a monster.
Yeah, well, I got two bulldogs down here that are being ridiculous. Yeah. I think it's that, that there's companies out there that want to collaborate and want to care. And again, we all need money to live and to operate and to show profit and loss and whatnot. But like, we are really energized by opportunity, impact, and fun. Like I say it a lot, and it's kind of money doesn't matter like to me in this process. Yeah. Like I need the math to work out, but
sure.
When I'm doing what I do and looking for opportunities, that's the last thing I think about. The first thing I think about is, wouldn't it be cool if this, and what if we did this, and how would this work, and could we pull this together, and then maybe if we hatch a really good idea, maybe at the end of that I'll sit down and try to figure out if it works financially. But at first it's all about that fun. And
it's for the fun, yeah.
Right. And I think kind of taking those shackles off and for people to kind of open up their minds and kind of go down that road first, I think it opens up a lot of doors and it gives them an opportunity to see something maybe they hadn't seen because they're so worried about all the businessy aspects about it. So yeah. I would want them to know that there's a company out there that thinks like that and that kind of wants clients and wants people to be on our team, but we want to be on their team too. And yeah. All ships rise with the tide. So
love it. So what I'm seeing, just to go back to this, is that you're encouraging people to walk off the ledge, to have their Wile E. Coyote moment.
You don't know unless you walk off the edge. Like even in our brand kind of makeup and our brand DNA, as much as I can appreciate the Steve Jobs and the Gary V's and those kinds of guys, our brand DNA is compiled of Evel Knievel, Bruce Lee. Like those are the guys that we follow because it's like, man, those guys really did it. Like, like Evel Knievel, he took a risk.
Are you following his Instagram, by the way? Like
I am not at the moment, but yeah.
Oh, you have to check it out. And he's on his estate is on my list of people to connect with because it is lovely. They're doing Evel Knievel jumps with that Evel Knievel toy regularly.
Well, I have seen those.
Yeah. So good.
But I think about that stuff and like, man, those guys, what I'm doing, like I take little business opportunities. That's nothing. He was riding an old school Harley ready to jump a
Snake River.
Snake River. It's like, that would have been scary.
Yeah. It's a different calibration, right?
Yeah. But no, I think it's important. You want to be well thought out and ready, but you got to jump or you don't know.
Yeah. Love that. Well, what's your favorite comic book?
I'm kind of all over, but I really like vintage stuff. Just because of it was such artists back in those days, they were production artists. So they worked, essentially they worked for the man and they got a paycheck. And you think about in today's day and age, the Marvel universe, the Avengers movies, like those guys all just collected a paycheck. They didn't get the ownership over that artwork. So like kind of the way that industry was back in the day and the kind of the artwork they produced, that's the stuff I really like to follow. But Superman, Batman, the characters, like I love that stuff, but I'm pretty fascinated by the industry model of even like you think about a Chuck Jones, as big as his name is, he was a production artist.
Yeah.
You know, he worked for Warner Brothers and he got a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Weird.
And Warner Brothers got the really big checks by being able to license out all those characters he created.
Yeah. Wild. Are you familiar with Gru the Wanderer?
I am. Yep.
Cool. Okay. And have you ever read Ambush Bug, which was, I believe, a DC?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I'm just throwing random shit at you.
So like my genre, like I like the mainstream stuff, but I also like the Watchmen, like anything Alan Moore, little darker stuff is pretty good. Right on. And I've kind of been looking at and collecting kind of abstract stuff. So there's DC, there's Marvel, there's Image Comics, places like that. But there's comic book companies that kind of came out of the woodwork, but then also crashed or got consumed by somebody else, like Atlas Comics. And like there's a bunch of them out there. So I feel like you look on eBay, it's fascinating to see the artwork and the different, almost the competitive nature in which that industry was compiled back in the day.
Wild.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
What's on your, do you read like regular books? Are you a business book guy or are you a fiction guy?
A little of both, but more business books.
Okay. What's your go-to business book?
Anything, Shoe Dogs probably the best one I've read in a while.
Yeah, right on.
Like I thought that was a great book, and it doesn't seem like a business book, but Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey that came out recently, that was actually a pretty good business book.
Yeah.
He's got some, kind of that step off the ledge kind of theme to it, but that was really good. Yeah.
Right on. Okay. Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever. Do you have any binge worthy shows that you go to, or are you not that guy?
I'm kind of all over the place. I use Netflix and series to kind of shut my mind off, to get me out of the workspace. Totally. So like,
I know it. Yeah.
My brain's either going on work or I have to get consumed by something so that I can kind of shut that part of my brain off. But anything. Tulsa King, Yellowstone. I love mobster stuff is really good. I know there's one on Netflix right now that's called Gotti, which is like a docuseries. I haven't watched it yet. Yeah. But yeah, anything like that that's going to kind of suck me in. I like history. I like, Lord of the Rings kind of stuff is good too, because it's that stuff that sucks you in that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's rad. Okay. I don't want to overuse this metaphor, but there's people in the world that are either about to embark on their own journey as an entrepreneur. And you said you had entrepreneur moments back in the day where you're just like, oh, what am I doing? And what would you say to those people? We can call them rebels in waiting. We can call them, entrepreneurs or people that are about to take that step or in the middle of it and maybe rethinking it. What would you say to them to get them, off the ledge?
I think the biggest thing is you have to be confident in yourself, your idea, and kind of what you're going to do. And that is kind of the momentum and the juice that you need to step off the ledge. I have worked with entrepreneurs that just, I want to step off the ledge, but I don't know if I should. And I've been thinking about it. I'm not sure anybody will buy what I'm selling. And as they're unwinding their confidence on their idea, they're stepping further and further away from the ledge.
Yeah.
And you kind of need that. And this is kind of where the sports thing comes in. You kind of need that gusto and that confidence to be like, I'm doing it. I'm not too worried about I'm just going to see what happens. And you just got to take the run at it. I can remember as a kid, like hitting a cinder block and a 2x4 on my bike, not really knowing, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
And that's just what you do.
We're going to learn a thing.
Yeah. And again, like you want to go into it as confident as you can and as educated as you can, but there is a tipping point where
you don't know.
I know as much as I'm going to, I know as much as I'm going to know today, and I'm going to learn the rest here in about a minute. So, and you just have to go for it. You have to.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you. That's Perfect. That's exactly what I think everybody needed to hear is the, step off ledge, stop getting further away from the damn thing. And you put it so beautifully. I'll paraphrase the idea that you've learned everything you could possibly learn up to this moment, but you're going to learn a lot more in the next minute. Yeah. You're going to learn what's important. That's so good.
Yeah. Like if I can add one thing, like I remember when I left my career to start CyberDogz, that next day was very bizarre because I went to bed an employed person and, I went to bed a guy who got a paycheck every 2 weeks and had my 401k and I had all that kind of done for me. Yeah. And 12 hours later, I woke up and I was unemployed or self-employed, however you want to look at it. And I had this Wild West adventure in front of me and had no idea. I don't know how this is going to go. And oh my God, it was just a very twilight moment considering I'd always been employed. I'd had jobs since I was a teenager and all of a sudden one day I didn't.
What made you make that leap? Or was it forced upon you? Or did you just choose? Like, how did that play out?
I chose. I had gotten far enough into the corporate world to figure out that either I need to just suck it up and ride this train until I retire. Yeah. Or I need to do something different because I'm a long ways away from where I started and I don't enjoy it anymore. Oh. And the more I thought about it, it was like, okay, so if that's true, where were you when you started? And it's, for me, I came all the way back to art where, okay, well, I started this journey being an artist and being creative and having fun. And that led me to this. And I started to kind of connect the dots up to the point where I was in my career. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was leading people and signing vacation forms. And I was just a long ways away from where I started. And it's like, I need to get back to where I started.
Was there a moment where you realized that? Like, what does that look like? Or was it the boiling frog thing? Just one day you woke up and you were cooked?
No. I mean, I wasn't at a breaking point or anything. I just didn't really care about the money and I didn't care about the status and the title and I didn't care about any of those things anymore. And it's like, I just want to do fun stuff. So like, I don't mind working. Don't get me wrong. But clearly, the work that I do, I just want it to be fun. Yeah. And I wasn't having fun anymore.
What? You're allowed to do that, Mike? What's going on? That could change the world right now.
that seemed like a crazy idea, but it's like, it was just something I needed to gamble on myself and try it. And it was funny because the day before I put my notice in, I took a free consultation with a business coach because the first one's free. So I went to a free consultation with this business coach and I kind of painted him the picture of the crossroads I was at. Yeah. And he asked me one question. He said, "Are you employable?" And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I mean, if you got fired tomorrow, could you find another job? And I'm like, oh yeah. And he's like, then why wouldn't you try this? And I was like, good point. So went in the next day, I put my notice in and here I am. Wow. Yeah. It was pretty, I mean, it was just a really kind of it was a profound question, but it was also kind of a boneheaded question where he's like, are you employable? I'm like, I think so. And he's like, then why wouldn't you do this? And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's not maybe as risky as you think it is.
Yeah. Cause I can always go back.
Yeah, you could.
So. But it just made a lot more sense when he put it to me like that. And then it also then became more ridiculous as to why I wouldn't do it.
What's yeah. Right. Like, of course.
Yeah. So I'm kind of because I answered it so confidently of, are you employable? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, then what's the holdup kind of a thing. And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, just that easy.
Yeah.
Hey, if you could, if you wanted to have one person on this show to hear their story, who would that person be? This is a new thing that we're starting on the Rebel. Not that we are going to get you might be like, Philip Knight, but who would that be?
It's probably been told before, but I would say the guys from Lincoln Design. Like, I don't know if you follow them or you're familiar with them, but
okay,
they're awesome. Like, I guess I'm technically probably I mean, not really. I'm not a competitor with them, but I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a competitor to them, even though we kind of do the same things.
Yeah.
But I just think they're incredible. Like,
all right, I will do my level best to get them on the show and hear their story as well. Mike, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned so much, and I'm so freaking inspired to go do something crazy, actually.
Well, sign me up. Let's do it.
Right on. Thank you so much for joining us on the RebelRebel Podcast. I've been your host, Michael Dargie, and on today's guest, Mike Brevik from CyberDogz Marketing. What a kick-ass episode. Assuming you just listened to all of it, everything you need to know is in the show notes down below or down to the side, or I don't know, wherever you find show notes these days, that's where they are. All the links to all his stuff. Give him a like, follow, and subscribe to, and support this insanity that he does, and the 20%, and if you have an idea for 20%, let us know. I think that'd be amazing. Collabs are the way. And if you're a rebel, or you know a rebel, why don't you head on over to the RebelRebelPodcast.com and fill out our guest request form. Well, we'd love to talk to you. All right, thanks. Until next time.